So perhaps we can go through and summarize each of the groups about what we learned and what actions we're thinking of taking. So perhaps because so the facilitator ideally would do that summary, please. So I'll do it for our group. I'm sorry about the duplication and having to listen to me so much. So we were talking about GPT5, SaaS and governance, and it sort of strayed a little bit into the strategy space and about the delivery of customer value. But I think probably I can summarize what we spoke about by the action that we want to take. So Andy was in our group, and he's an IT director. He was like, I'm getting a lot of pressure from board. I don't really know where to start with this. So we want to make a guide for Andy that is how to get started with our AI, a guide for housing IT directors. So this will be talking about value for money, short-term value for money, but also transformation of the operating model, linking to the strategy, making that really clear, and framing IT as an enabling function, making sure that sort of language is really good. And that blocking off is not one of those things that you can do. If you just sort of prevent ChatGPT on your network, that your staff will find ways around that, and it's introducing probably more risk. So you need that cultural piece and that data protection compliance piece in there as well. So that's a sort of 2-page artifact that we'd like to make on a Creative Commons license so that anybody can just use it and alter it as they see fit. So it would be useful to get some feedback from the group about whether that is the kind of thing that you think might be useful for the sector, maybe not for yourself. Thumbs down are okay too, right? Like this is a feedback loop. Cool. So there's some thumbs up. That sounds like it might be useful. So we'll move on to the second one, which was Richard Hawkes was talking about Platformizer. Perhaps you could share what you got up to.
Yeah, certainly. And I can answer the question I was asked before it brutally kicked us out mid-flow. So I demoed Platformizer, which is a tool for creating, at this stage, letters for customers, but it does it compliantly with our tone of voice. Now, a lot of the conversation, I would say, is around how do you actually get something like this off the ground? What skills do you need to do it? And how do you get buy-in, and how do you actually get this piece of work into something that can be delivered? And for us, it's been very opportunistic of showing the art of the possible, but linking it to existing programs of work. So for example, we've got our customer first program, which is about giving customers the service that they've asked for in the way that they've asked for it. So we're using data and generative AI to assist us with that in a very low cost way, incredibly low cost. Final question I had from Peter was around the sort of ethics of it, and when we bring customer data in, what will happen then? We will need to get stronger on the governance side of things, which is quite aligns quite nicely with the action that you just spoke about, Guy. But also we've got a customer voice panel, and interestingly enough, I'm demoing it to them. I think it's next week, just to keep them abreast with what we're doing with AI. And everything so far has been quite well received by them. As we start to move into this world of, I don't know, AI, if you had all of your outcomes from a complaint, AI could generate the determination and send out the response for you. It's how can you rely on things like that and not lose the human element and the fact that you're a caring organisation. We didn't get as far as an action, but I did have a request to show Platform Property Bot, which has moved on quite a bit from when I last showed it. So perhaps I could show that at the next session if needs be. But also my offer is I'm happy to run a separate session on what an implementation of Platformizer could look like, and how I could share the code with you to make that happen, because it is massively low cost. Each letter it generates is pence, but the time it saves is huge.
Excellent. Okay, so let's pick that up about potentially sort of sharing and distributing, and see if we can do that in an efficient way. Maybe even a recording of a demo might be something that's more repeatable for you.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yep.
So perhaps we can work that through the organising committee. So the third one was around automations. So Opalua.
I picked that up in Simon's absence, helped by Ian from Team Oceans. Thanks a lot, Ian, for that. So we sort of moved that discussion forward. I think what we got from that was the people on the call were looking for ideas how they could use AI for automation. So quite early on, really. So it was, you know, what are the best ways? How can we start to use this? What are the kind of simple things that we could roll out? We strayed a little bit into then, you know, how geared up we were, where we were as an organization, and people within the organization starting to use it, and engagement around that. So I think in terms of actions from that, I think there's two things. There was a request there to share information on guidance that you've shared with across your organization on how to use AI. So I think that's really useful. How are you encouraging people or putting guardrails around that and getting people to use AI in the organization? But another thing, I think we've touched on this before, is like use cases and simple use cases around automation or semi-automation and the ways that people are starting to use AI. I think people just want some ideas on simple things that they can start to roll forward.
That's great. Thanks very much, Mark, and thanks for stepping into those shoes. That's really helpful. So I think the final group we had was AI approach and training. So that's Mark Beach.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. I mean, again, really interesting, really helpful. Seem to learn things every time we have these sessions, so that's fantastic. We had a couple of people, Eleanor, Iftikhar, more kind of consultant kind of background, and then Richard and myself work for housing associations. We got more into the sort of training stuff rather than the overall organizational approach, kind of touching on things like training around use of agents, you know, creating agents internally, and training on effective prompt writing and what some of the options are around that. Richard talked about some free MS training he'd been on. Iftikhar talked about LinkedIn training options that you can get through partnerships with LinkedIn. So it feels like there's a bit of we didn't get onto a defined action. We ran out of time sort of mid-sentence, but I don't know, it potentially feels like there might be a helpful action in terms of trying to pull together some of those free training options that we could then share with the wider group. And that organisations could potentially use internally in a more sort of controlled and structured way when they're thinking about how their colleagues are using Copilot and the like in their organisations. Not sure where we're going to start with it, but that might be a helpful next step. But we didn't really discuss that. I'm just sort of thinking on the hop, really.
Yeah, that sounds really good, and that links in with some of the work that Peter Lunio's been doing with like Dash AI. So
yeah, Mark. Well, I'm just going to say, Mark, we curated a free video set that we've seen in terms of courses and things. That if you're happy, I'm happy to share that.
That would be brilliant. Yeah, I mean, maybe if I could catch up with you separately, Peter, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. I'm happy to share it with the group. So these are courses, videos that are free that we've looked at, and we think they match social housing, literacy awareness, etc.
Sounds like you've already done the action then, Peter.
Well, we can only try.
I think there was a helpful, interesting point we made about not being a free-for-all internally in organisations. So if you've got that kind of information, and then organisationally people can decide how to use it to benefit internally best, can't they?
Yeah, so it's a self-help. We've got a self-help program, basically.
Brilliant. Yeah, it sounds like we can help to signpost to that sort of thing. Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you all. Was there anybody else, any other groups that I've missed out somehow? I don't think so. Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. So thank you very much for coming to this session. I think so. The next session will be on the 3rd of October, same time, and it's show and tell. So we'll probably do some. If you remember, if you were there for the first session, we did sort of 4 short talks. Probably try to do something similar. We'll see whether that works. So Richard's volunteered. If you'd like to share something with the group, then please drop us a note, and we'll try to put together a program that looks good and covers a range of different things. Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your engagement here. It's been super, and thanks very much for coming in September when it's so very, very busy. So really appreciate you turning out.